What's going on, guys? Dan from SSG bringing you another Edison format match. This time we have myself on the left playing Ancient Gears and Rob on the right playing Gravekeepers. So pretty interesting matchup here. We have Rob setting a defense position monster on turn 1 as well as 2 back rows behind it. Ideally you want to have a Gravekeeper Spy set on turn 1 so that Rob can start accruing card advantage and get maybe a Descendant out of the deck to pop a card and go on the offensive. But nonetheless, a solid start, 2 back rows and a defense position monster. However, I'm going to go and activate Heavy Storm, and it looks like it resolves, destroying a Bottomless Trap Hole as well as a Royal Oppression. So really strong opening here for me, just getting that +1 right off the bat. And now just facing down that defense position monster on Rob's side. But it looks like I'm going to drop down an Ancient Gear Galvatron into the graveyard to special summon a Machina Fortress and declare an attack into that Gravekeeper Spy. So pretty interesting turn of events here. Rob had a pretty solid setup, but Heavy Storm blows the back rows away, and now Gearframe is threatening to pressure Rob. However, Rob is going to have a card in play. He's going to get a Gravekeeper monster out of his deck, which will allow him to have a board presence and potentially have a Descendant to pop another Gravekeeper on the following turn with his normal summon. So, and it looks like we do go for Descendant here. Descendant, just one of the powerful cards in the Gravekeeper deck, just giving value and also just having constant removal. Having access to removal into your engine is very, very strong in Edison format especially. And Machina Fortress just going to be a big threat that Rob has to deal with here. Both players down to fairly low cards. I think it's about 4-4 each as I pass the turn over to Rob, and he draws for turn here with the Descendant in play. So pretty interesting spot. We're going to see exactly what Rob has, and it's going to be a Necro Valley here, as well as 2 set back rows, and then a Royal Tribute. So Rob playing out his whole hand and gonna get some value with the Royal Tribute here, discarding a Ancient Gear Golem to the graveyard, 1-for-1ing, but also gaining that valuable information of Trapstun and a Gear Town. And it looks like Rob passes his turn right after that, and I go to my turn and attack with the Gearframe, or the Fortress rather, right into a Mirror Force. So Rob, ready to use his back row right away, just passes the turn over so we can remove that Fortress out of play. I set a back row over and pass to Rob. He goes to his turn and he's going to declare an attack with the Descendant, which is now at 2000, and this is exactly where you want to be if you're the Gravekeeper deck, just having a big clock in play. But now on my turn, I have a set field spell to pop the Necro Valley, and then another set field spell destroying a Gear Town that was face down. And the Gear Town is going to go ahead and summon the Ancient Gear Galvatron Dragon, 3000 beat stick that cannot be responded to when it declares an attack. So pretty powerful card that you don't have to commit your normal summon to summon. And it looks like we're declaring attack onto the Descendant here, and it's going to take the Descendant down for 1500. Since there's no more Necro Valley, the Descendant's down to 1500 itself. So 15 to Rob. And he goes to his turn and activates a Gravekeeper Steel, which is a card advantage engine for this Gravekeeper deck, adding a Gravekeeper Spy and a Descendant from his graveyard to his hand. And then we're going to see the Spy most likely being set there, as well as a back row. Passing over to me, and I have the tempo advantage. I'm going to keep declaring attacks, flipping over that Spy and destroying it. Spy will, though, get a Gravekeeper out of the deck. And I think Rob most likely wants to go for another copy of Descendant here, just ensuring the fact that he'll have access to it on the following turn, because he is facing down the Galvatron Dragon, which is a big threat in this spot, attacking for 3000. And yeah, he goes to the Descendant, so he just wants to make sure he has the removal available to him. And because in this deck, the Galvatrons or all the Ancient Gears can be pretty difficult to deal with for the Gravekeeper deck, as it plays a lot of copies of Dimensional Prison, of course Mirror Force, a lot of ways to interact in battle. But yeah, he grabs the Descendant out of the deck, and it looks like I don't really have anything else to add to the board, so I pass over to Rob here, and he's going to draw for turn. we're likely going to see that second Descendant from the hand come down, and yes we do. And Rob's going to activate Priority, sacking one of the Descendants off and getting rid of the Galvatron Dragon. So pretty awesome play from Rob, just comboing his Gravekeeper Spy with his Descendant, making sure he has 2 monsters in play so he can remove the big Galvatron Dragon, attacking for 15 and passing the turn over to me. So Rob with 2 back rows now as well, very, very strong behind this 1 Descendant. Hopefully he can protect his monster. Looks like I set a back row as well as a field spell. I'm fanning out my graveyard, looking for exactly what I can do. We have a Machina Fortress in the grave, which is a very, very powerful card in this matchup, just being able to reborn that over and over again by discarding any machine. But it looks like Rob's just going to keep attacking down with that Descendant, declaring another attack for 1500, and now I'm down to 3000, so a 2-turn clock for Rob, and it looks like I draw and pass again. So this Descendant is just threatening to run away with the game, as we have another declaration of attack, bringing me down to 15. So the next attack is lethal, as Rob adds another back row to the mix there on the right side. This Gravekeeper deck is just taking complete control of the game, even without a Necro Valley in play. Just having a clock in play with potentially multiple forms of interaction behind it is going to win games here. But it looks like I'm going to activate a Giant Trunade, maybe try and get something powerful off on this turn, wiping away those back rows for the time being. And the Giant Trunade does resolve, so Rob with just the Descendant in play now. And the Ancient Gear deck does have a lot of follow-up plays, things it can just do and special summon monsters, reborn Machina Fortress out of the graveyard. We could see something like a Mausoleum into a Ancient Gear Beast in this spot. A lot of different things that the deck can do just to present multiple powerful threats on the same turn. And having this 1-turn window with Giant Trunade might fare to be pretty powerful here, but we're going to see exactly what I'm working with now. Fanning out the graveyard, looking at what my options could possibly be. And we have a Brain Control, so paying 800 down to 700. And the Descendant is mine for the time being here. The Ancient Gear deck generally plays Brain Control just to try to kill the opponent. But we have a Megamorph here, which is a pretty sweet tech I've been liking a lot in these Ancient Gear decks, as it doubles the attack of the Descendant, so it can attack directly for 3000. Putting Rob on 3500 left. So Megamorph just doubling the attack of a monster that is equipped once you have lower life. And now that Rob has a monster that is equipped and he has higher life, it is actually halved. So the Gravekeeper Descendant is now only 750. However, it's still a lethal threat at this point. So me being only at 700 is not very great, as Rob doesn't really have to commit anything to the board. He can just potentially attack for game here, force me to have some sort of response. And here comes a Necro Valley, even boosting his attack position monster by 500 attack here. And Rob could have something like a Gravekeeper to summon and try and pop a back row, but that wouldn't really be playing around Torrential. I kind of like just attacking in this spot. I think Rob can think that I have an answer because I let him keep the monster, but I don't. The 750, or I guess 1250, comes in and attacks me down to 0. So Gravekeeper's taking game 1, and then I have a start of Machina Gearframe on turn 1 with the Ancient Gear deck, searching out the Machina Fortress. Very, very strong start here. Fortress, one of the best cards in this matchup, as a lot of Rob's removal, like Descendant, targets and can get some extra value that way. But I set a back row behind Gearframe, just really strong start, similar to Stratos, 1 back row, just very strong, solid, getting your Machina Fortress out of the deck, which is probably your best card in the matchup. And Rob looks like he's going to be setting a defense position monster here. And what exactly are we going to have? We have a Necro Valley here. So Necro Valley really strong with the defense position monster Gravekeepers, and along with 4 back rows for Rob. So a lot of cards to grind through here. for the Ancient Gear deck. However, the Gear Frame did already get a +1, so we're already up a card on the left side. So that might help us fight through some of those back rows, as a lot of the cards for the Gravekeeper deck are 1-for-1 based. We can also assume that Rob has something like a Solemn Judgment or Dark Bribe or a Starlight Road to protect him from heavy. But it looks like I have a Terraforming to go search out a Gear Town here. And another copy of Terraforming. So pretty interesting here. 2 copies of Terraforming coming down and searching out a Gear Town and then a Mausoleum. And Mausoleum is just, man, I love this card in Edison format. Like, it just brews a lot of different decks. It's a very powerful card. I've been working on a lot of Mausoleum decks. I think the card is just very, very good. And looks like we have a set field spell here that destroys the Necro Valley, and then a set field spell destroying the Gear Town. And remember, we got to make sure that we set our card over the Gear Town so it does not miss timing when we activate the Mausoleum here. But it looks like we're going to summon a Galvatron Dragon, of course. That is the only target that is in my list. We're just going to drop a 3k guy into play. Doesn't look like Rob has a Torrential in response here. But then we're going to flip over that Mausoleum and activate its effect. So we can pay any number of life points, 1,000, 2,000. Looks like we're paying 2,000 here down to 6,000 to drop that Machina Fortress into play for the cost of 2,000 life points. And look at this board now, just adding 2 huge monsters and declaring an attack here with the Galvatron Dragon is going to hit the Gravekeeper's Guard. Guard, one of the strong cards in this deck, just kind of like bouncing, getting things out of the way, answering powerful synchro monsters like Stardust Dragon very easily. I don't see too many guards running around in Gravekeeper lists, but the lists we've been working with have been playing anywhere from 2 to sometimes even 3 copies, and we kind of landed on 2 for now. I think the right number is most likely 2, as Rob is thinking about what he's going to target here with the guard. And he chooses the Machina Fortress because he doesn't have a card in hand, so the Machina Fortress can't activate to discard a card out of Rob's hand here. But the Gear Frame will declare an attack, as it's the only monster that hasn't declared an attack yet. And Rob just elects to take the 18. You don't really want to use something like a Deep Prison on that Gear Frame, as it's a card that already replaced itself. There's much bigger threats to worry about already in play, but also more to come. And Rob draws here, and he still has the 4 back row and 1 in hand, and he just passes. So looking to exchange some of his back rows for the threats I have in play, I draw for turn, and I'm just most likely going to attack here, not add too much to the board. But it looks like I'm actually activating Trap Stun, which is in the main deck for the Ancient Gear deck. I find the card to be very powerful, as Mausoleum is now safe to activate. Just shutting off all those back rows and making really, really strong pushes here, paying another 2,000 to drop that Machina Fortress into play, and then Heavy Storm comes down. So, I mean, no Starlight Road, no Solemn here. Looks like Rob is going to activate Book of Moon, as it's his only interactive trap or interactive card that he can play, and he targets the Machina Fortress. And we see that Starlight Road, the Dimensional Prison, getting into the Graveyard Trap Stun, plus Heavy Storm, very powerful combination, and the Mausoleum just adding to the board throughout all of that interaction. And Rob is down to 1 card now. It's going to be really, really hard for him to have some sort of comeback, as the Gravekeeper deck doesn't really do that sort of thing. And now we have another Fortress coming into play from the hand, discarding a level 8 monster with it to present lethal. And very, very strong, and out of nowhere, just Trap Stun, Heavy Storm, just wham wham, big strong monsters coming into play. And that's the power of this Ancient Gear deck, just beating up on these control decks by having Trap Stun in the main, Heavy Storm, Giant Trunade, just putting pressure on the opponent at all times. And now we have a turn 1 set from Rob again. We have the monster and 2 back rows, the standard good start for the Gravekeeper deck. Ideally, he has a spy set, but now I'm going to actually special summon a Cyber Dragon, which is pretty solid in this spot, forcing a back row out of Rob, or electing to have the Gravekeeper Spy get flipped and die. So Rob will get a monster for his troubles here. The Spy essentially replaces itself, facing down the Cyber Dragon on the left side. Cyber Dragon is also in the main deck of the Ancient Gear deck that I like to run. as I've been working on it for a little while. I've been working on Ancient Gears for off and on for a little while, but elected to bring it to you guys here. And it looks like Rob is going to summon that Descendant out of the deck. Descendant's usually the thing you just summon, because it's your searchable removal. It's just a solid card. It's 2k with Necro Valley. Very, very good card you want to search out most of the time. Cyber Dragon, really good in this matchup as it kind of beats over everything except for Commandant with Necro Valley in play. So pretty strong there. The only way to kind of wall it out or have it be sort of weakened is by having something like a Spy in defense position with a Necro Valley in play for that 2500 wall. But it looks like Rob does finally have the Necro Valley here and the Commandant. So interesting here. He has a choice. I believe he ends up attacking, which it doesn't really matter. Either way, the Commandant trades off with the Cyber Dragon. Technically, you're playing around Honest, but I don't think Honest is played in these Ancient Gear decks. So, Rob with 2 back row, Necro Valley, and the 2000 Gravekeeper Descendant, which is just kind of like the setup you want in this deck. In a lot of matchups, this game would be over. Things like Debris Dragon are dead, things like Pot of Avarice, but luckily the Ancient Gear deck does have a way to fight back. A lot of different ways to summon powerful monsters, and it looks like I'm going to activate a Mausoleum here to destroy that Necro Valley. And remember, there's only one field spell in play at a time in Edison format, and it's kind of one of the tricky things about this matchup specifically. And I think I elect to pay 1,000 instead of 2,000. I initially was going to summon a bigger guy, but I end up with Ancient Gear Beast. So Ancient Gear Beast is one of my favorite cards in this deck, of course, but also in Edison format. It's just 2,000, 1 tribute, opponent can't respond. It like stops Raikou, it stops like Tomato, like just so many different things. They can't deep prison. All these good cards that are played in so many different decks. This card just beats, and it's going to attack here, and Rob actually activates Skill Drain when I declare that I'm going to my battle phase. So he's going to pay 1,000. And now he can presumably activate a Deep Prison or a Mirror Force when that Ancient Gear Beast decides to declare an attack here. And I do change my mind and I don't attack because of the Skill Drain, because I don't want to lose board position just to 1 copy of Deep Prison here. And I set a face down Spell or Trap as well before passing over, and I think I elect not to attack just because I have a means to summon more monsters from my hand with the Mausoleum. I can summon something, maybe change the beast to defense position, play around something like a Mirror Force, and no reason to give up tempo here, as we most likely believe that he does have a Deep Prison because of the Skill Drain flip. If it was a bait where he said, hey, I want to protect my monster, maybe this is a way to keep my monster around, that's a pretty interesting bait, and we'll give props to Rob for that. But most likely he does have a Battle Trap, and he sets another back row as well. So 2 back rows, Skill Drain, and the Descendant in play as I go to my turn with the Mausoleum active, looking most likely to summon another monster here. And it looks like I do, so I'm going to pay, what do we see we're going to pay here? Okay, so go down another 1,000 and drop another Ancient Gear Beast into play. So Ancient Gear Beast kind of just controlling the board now, just 2,000 guys. And we have a Deep Prison here, so Mirror Force would have been pretty sweet, but Deep Prison just taking out one of the Ancient Gear Beasts, and then the second one's going to be able to take an attack onto that Descendant here. And what is Rob going to respond with? Book of Moon isn't that great because the Beast defense is also 2,000, and it does take down the Descendant for 500 damage there, bringing Rob down to 65, which is not a super comfortable life total. I mean, 65 is a lot, but this deck can present very powerful threats very quickly. Rob sets a defense position monster as well as another back row here, and it looks like it's a Spy, so the Beast attacks the Spy and gets walled as the Spy is 2,000. So even exchange there, just getting walled, no damage for either player. And yeah, Spy just doing great things with skill drain in play. This is a normal thing that happens if anyone has ever played against Gravekeepers in this matchup. But Rob goes to his turn, draws and passes, doesn't really do anything else, looking to buy some time with this Gravekeeper Spy, and I think it's a fine play, just looking for outs, looking for answers, and on my turn I'm going to most likely look to push through, try and like break through that wall to try and get at Rob's life total, as 65 is a number that we need to bring down to 0 at some point. And it looks like I'm going to activate Heavy Storm, having 3 cards of my own, Heavy and Back Row and Mausoleum, and Rob has 3 as well, essentially. And we have a Book of Moon booking the Spy face down, and then the Heavy Storm resolving here. So interesting play. The Book of Moon does essentially make it so that Gravekeeper Spy will get an effect here. And then I'm considering my options. What exactly am I going to do to follow up here? And it looks like a Gear Frame. So Gear Frame just really strong in this spot, just going to be able to grab Machina Fortress, which is going to be another threat at one point or another. And it looks like I'm discarding an Ancient Gear Golem as well as the Fortress to reborn the Fortress back, and we're going to be able to break through that wall of defense from Rob with the Gravekeeper Spy, as Fortress declares an attack, attacking over the Spy, and we have a Commandant coming out in attack position, and the Beast will attack over for 400 here, bringing Rob to 61, and a direct attack from the Gear Frame for 18, bringing Rob down to 43. So look at this big board now. You know, Rob was walling up with back rows, and now this huge board just comes down and attacks, but Rob sets 3 more back rows and passes. This deck just plays a lot of removal, a lot of Deep Prisons, a lot of Book of Moons, and we're gonna see, ideally Rob has a Mirror Force here, but we're gonna see what's going on. And there's a pretty interesting decision here for me, because the Union monster of Gear Frame can equip to Fortress, and I'm thinking about it here. I believe I decide to equip it to play around something like Mirror Force, and then of course we attack with the Ancient Gear Beast, as that's the one that Rob can't respond to. And Rob has Book of Moon, which kind of just makes the Gear Frame fall off here, which is kind of a big play, a little punish there. But the Fortress goes face down, and for Rob's turn he sets another back row here, and we're gonna flip up that Fortress and now declare an attack with the Gear Frame first for the Ancient Gear Beast first for 2,000. Make sure we get the damage in, and then the Fortress ends up getting deprisoned. And the reason why we attack with Beast first is because we just don't want to get Mirror Forced before getting that 2,000 damage. But Rob sets the defense position monster and passes, and ideally it's something like Gravekeeper Spy that could really get him back in the game. But it looks like I draw a level 8 monster here, and I tried to discard it for Gear Frame, but I realized my Gear Frame, my Fortress rather, is banished. But now Scrap Recycler, which is a 1-of in this deck, and I've been really impressed with Scrap Recycler. Just getting the Fortress into the graveyard, acting as a Foolish Burial type monster, is going to turn all of our dead level 8 monsters in our hand into Fortress, as Fortress comes back, and we can now discard and summon that Fortress back the right way, not from the banished pile. But Scrap Recycler, really powerful card. I'm thinking about adding more copies into the deck, and Rob's asking like what's the stats on Scrap Recycler, because he's at 300 here, and looks like we attack into a guard, which bounces the Gear Beast, and then Scrap Recycler does get in for lethal, which is pretty awesome here. And that is the match, guys. I hope everyone enjoyed. It's a pretty interesting matchup, decks you don't see too often. The field spells kind of go back and forth, but let me know what you guys thought in the comments section below about the match, how each deck played out, but also about my commentary, as I'm trying to improve with every video here. And that is about it, guys. Join the Discord, like, comment, subscribe, and without further ado, this is Dan V from SSG, signing out.